and welcome back. So we are going to be continuing with talking more about the inferior axial skeleton. So that is going to include not the skull so much, but the... Okay, good. So this is part two. Part two, thoracic stuff. Not just thoracic stuff, but we were just talking in class about the thoracic vertebrae. So let's go back to cervical vertebrae for 1 minute. So pick up your cervical vertebrae, and I want you to look at one thing that is like the telltale sign of a cervical vertebrae is what we call like the transverse foramina. It's got 3 holes. Yeah, like see how it's got like 2 side holes? That's like one of the telltale signs. Okay. That will always help you kind of like trying to find, okay, but go ahead and pick up like a lumbar. Nope, just the one. That's just the one. Right, let's grab a thoracic. Oh, just the one. You know. Yeah, so that's like a cervical vertebrae cheat sheet grade knowledge item, okay? So remember that one. So that is really going to help. And let me just like really circle. Okay, so on the video, there are 3, right? Foramen. And it looks like Mickey Mouse on the video. That's cute. Okay, so let's talk about, not everybody in class got both of these articulating pairs, but some of you did. And so like I'm going to give you like the haps on it. So we talked about what axis and atlas mean. Atlas is going to be holding up the planet, the world, which is in this case your skull, and so that is C1, cervical vertebrae 1. C2, or cervical vertebrae 2, is known as axis, and that provides a greater range of motion. So we can just look up, and we can look down, and we look side and side, and all that good stuff. So they operate directionally together. So here they are. Atlas is the only one that doesn't have like a proper vertebral body. You know, like your like lumbars have a big one, right? That resting point where the fibrocartilage meets. Like on yours, I think you had both, right? Yeah, so it doesn't have it. It just like, so it's big hole. It sits under foramen magnets. So that's kind of helpful. So that's how you know axis. And then it articulates, or atlas. And so it articulates with axis. And axis is the only one that has this big thumb that sticks straight up, right? We call it the dens, right? It's like a tooth. It's like the odontoid process. Here. For those of you who don't have, I'm just gonna come around. But see how they kind of like, yeah, you got it. Good. And see how it does this thing where it kind of like just gets right in there. Hold on, my facets are like not happening right. Okay, they're there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and so that allows for it to kind of like rotate on, yeah, so what ends up happening is axis like can rotate on it like a hook, right? Like see how it's kind of like choo choo choo. And I wish I could do this in the video, but I don't have a way to video it. But like basically it uses this as a hinge and it just like it hooks around and it allows you to kind of circle different directions. Okay, those are the 2 you need to know by name, C1, C2. No, they're at least C1 and C2. If you got the names, wow, you're good. You're good for the test, okay? So, and also the dens. Remember that big process. Remember processing part of a bone that sticks out. Thoracic vertebrae versus lumbar vertebrae is always a kind of a trouble spot for folks. So grab like a canonical lumbar. You know, we already kind of sorted those out for everybody. And then grab your thoracic vertebrae, the one that has that process that usually points like pretty far down. Okay, so the first thing to know between the difference of a thoracic vertebrae and a lumbar vertebrae, and this always isn't the best way to tell, but it's like a starting point. The lumbar vertebrae have a bigger body, which is this vertebral body. It's this part of the bone right here. If you're looking at like actual bone, you can even see the trabecular bone kind of underneath it. It's usually got a little bit of porosity there on our actual skeletons. So there's this. The next thing to kind of look for is it's gonna have one foramen. One foramen. And so that's where the spinal cord is coming through. You don't have transverse foramen. The next thing that helps you kind of know what you're dealing with is like if you look at the processes. Remember the processes, those pointy part, like the horn looking things on the bones. So the thoracic one is usually real, it's got three. It's not got a lot. It has the facets. They look like little ears, like if it was a giraffe, I guess. They're sticking up here on the most superior portion. But that's the one, two, three of it. And you're going to be able to use that to help you tell the difference because when we look at the lumbar vertebrae, we have one, two, three still, but then the facets on the back almost look like four and five. They're so robust and they start curving towards the back. They go from being ears to looking like they're really one, two, three, four, five processes. See how that looks? They're just more aggressive, looking robust. Okay. So those are kind of the distinctive features for the most part. Let's grab your sacrum. All right, so the sacral bone that we have here for each one. So this bone, as you notice, like it has a lot of ridging. I want you to know a few things. Number one, it's about 5 fused vertebrae. It's about 5 of them. And if you turn it and look at like the underbelly or the curvature of it, you can really see there's still those like definitive points of distinction between each one of the vertebral bodies. Here, you can use this one. No problem. No, we have so many skeletons. We are fortunate. So there's that. We also have what look like foramina, and they technically are foramina, but they're really like spaces between each one of the fused bones. So that's not going to be too hard. I believe most of the skeletons we have here have a fused coccyx to, do they? Right, for the most part, yeah. To sacrum. There's the tailbone. They're tiny. They look like they're very indistinct. You're gonna know it when you see it, I feel like. If this is especially since some of you are in lab and you got to like kind of handle it, you don't really forget that one. That's just the tiniest thing. So between 3 to 5 of those little vertebrae, depending on the individual. Okay, let's call it a wrap on the um let's call it a wrap here on the thoracic vertebrae, and let's kind of move on into the next series. Let's look at some ribs, some costals.